Okay.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Devios, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Sounds Good Podcast. Today, for a change, we have someone really special all the way from Brooklyn. We've got Mr. Nimesh Patel, who's joined us and was
Hi
kind enough
guys.
to do this with us. Nimesh is going to be talking about his upcoming animated series called Vidiots, of which he's released an episode which both Parth, Bhai, and I saw, and we really liked it. It was really tight, and he's also going to be talking about his other ventures. And so, hey, Nimesh, how's it going? So glad to
Hey
have you here.
man, how are you guys? Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. So, Nimesh, actually, I mean, of course, you've been doing comedy for a very long time. I also happen to be a small comic from India,
Hmm.
and I happen to produce open mics in the city that I belong to, which is Pune, which is where
Hmm.
Parth Bhai and I, who's my co-host, we met. And actually, one of my friends who's following you also told me that you were up for the podcast. So, which brings us to our first question today. What prompted you to go and do these spots or these appearances in podcasts that you randomly decided to do? What was the instigating factor for you?
As you said, I put out what's it called? A cartoon.
Right.
And I've been meaning to connect, like I want to basically grassroots myself into people that don't know me. And I think if I can
Right.
get, I don't know how many people your podcast reach or what other podcasts reach, but I'm a man of the people and I want to talk to as many people as I can. I don't have a lot of time in the sense that when I booked all these podcasts, I
Right.
booked like 30 or 34, I think
Ah,
total.
okay.
But I didn't have a writing job when I did that. Now I have one, so my time's a bit
Oh, okay.
compressed.
Right.
But not to say on this one, just in general. But I try to keep the commitments that I made to talk to all the people, how big or small, no matter how big or small that they are. Only because I want to get as many eyeballs on Zoo Idiots as I can. It's a cartoon that I spent all of quarantine working on with
Right.
my co-creator Mookie Thompson,
Right.
and we put our heart and soul into it because we didn't get paid. We got paid to do it, but it was like it's maybe if I do the math on how much we got paid and how much work we put in, it's probably $1.50 an hour because
Oh, okay.
we've been
Right.
working on it. We worked on it since like April
Right.
and like 60, 70-hour weeks, just putting all this time in.
Right.
And it's something we're very proud of that we created because it's got a lot of themes, got a lot of messaging. It's heavy jokes.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's, my first script. It's like we made a baby.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'm trying to show everyone my baby. It's zooidiots.com. If you like cartoons, if you like Rick and Morty or South
South Park.
Park,
Right.
I think you can see that's what we are aspiring to make, you know?
Correct. That's fantastic, actually, because like you said that you're the man of the people, and even in Zoo Idiots, if anybody's watched the episode, the first pilot episode that you guys have put out, you guys have actually sort of, if I'm not wrong, that's my own interpretation, that you guys have sort of given animals a metaphor for human beings,
Yes, of
and you're
course.
basically trying to represent that. So, what was the germ of an idea when you and your co-creator Mookie Thompson came up with Zoo Idiots? What was the instigating factor for that?
So when we came up with Zooidiot, I've told the story a billion times, but I love telling it, so it's no problem. In April when lockdown had happened, or in March, I guess I'd have to check my emails to see exactly when. I got an email from a friend of mine who I had met 2 years ago.
Right.
Um, he emailed me saying, "Hey, I know you do comedy. You're a comedy writer.
Hmm.
Do you know anyone that would be interested in this project that my friends and I have put together about
Hmm.
climate change?" And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
my friend is an engineer, and his three buddies. One of them runs a hedge fund. He's like a manager of a
Right.
hedge fund. Another one is a very prominent, not very like a very successful investment banker in Brazil, and
Okay.
another one is a successful venture capitalist and a board
Hmm.
member of some startup companies.
Hmm.
And the four of them had put this idea together to do something about climate change, something comedic to
Correct.
get message out about climate change.
Hmm.
And he hit me up saying, we've noticed that there's dolphins in the Venice Canal, meaning, humans have such a crazy impact on the climate that when we disappear because of lockdown or whatever, that animals really flourish or come into new lives. And so they wanted to do like a Twitter project where a bunch of animals would be talking to each other on Twitter and, create a bunch of different accounts and update them all the time and have them talking this and that. And he asked me if someone would be interested in doing that. And I said point blank, nah, I don't think that's a funny or workable idea. I'm sure someone would do it, but that's not something anyone of high caliber would be interested in, and so I talked to him. I said, give me a second and give me a day and let me think about it. And I went to my friend Mookie, who is like a comedy writing savant, a stand-up comedian in his own right. Has worked on like the Lucas Brothers Moving Co., on Vice, a bunch of stuff. But he's like a TV genius in terms of the way he breaks down TV and character development. So I went to him and we worked together a bunch of stuff before. And I was like, yo, let's bring these guys something. I think we could do something animated with these guys. And we pitched them this idea about animals. What's a perfect place for animals to be in quarantine? A zoo. And we pitched this idea about animals trapped in the zoo. The humans have disappeared for unknown reasons, and they're dealing with things like climate change and capitalism versus socialism and all these other sort of subtle themes that we've put into the show. And the four guys who they call themselves the Penguin Partners. Jeremy is my point of contact. Well, not my point of contact, but the guy that initially hit me up. And the four of them, we pitched it to the four of them, and they were like, yo, that's a great idea. I introduced them to Mookie. Mookie sort of just wowed them with his comedy writing prowess and his understanding of what goes into making a show. And then, we set off on this huge endeavor to make a cartoon with a shoestring budget and four people doing all of it.
Mind me asking you, what was the budget? Like, you could give me a ballpark figure. Like, I mean, for all the aspiring animators who want to, produce their own thing, what would the ideal budget be?
I won't tell you a number, but I will tell you that it's not cheap to hire an animator.
Absolutely.
The writing stuff. So the team is basically four of us. It's on the production side, actually making stuff. It's my friend Mookie, myself, our friend Matt Weir, who is a producer and a storyboard artist and a writer. And he's like, he helps us, punch up stuff and creates the storyboards for the show. And then our animator is this super talented guy named Rob Lynch, who has done stuff for Comedy Central, has done stuff for, bigger companies, but, it's just him by himself doing all this stuff. He's like a one-man studio when it comes to creating. But that, like, we got a steal of a deal with him, but he's also getting paid, a good rate for what we're doing. And the majority of the budget went to him, and as it should have, like he made it come to life.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, if you're an aspiring animator and you're really good at animating, there's a market for you. I don't know how to put I don't know anything about putting your stuff out there. We've ended up finding this guy Rob because I hit one of my friends up who had worked with him before. But he's done like insane work on this project. It's probably, in my opinion, the best thing he's done because, it's my baby, but it looks incredible. You could see, like, when you turn it on, it looks like, oh shit, we're watching television. You know what I mean? Like,
it does.
And so that was the germ of the idea that turned into the pilot that we put out. It started with a guy hitting me up about climate change, and we're like, no, that's let's do this instead. And then it turned into a cartoon that we made and are very happy with.
That's fantastic, actually, because why I asked you about the figure as well, like what was the production cost, is because I really didn't see any budget cuts or any compromises in terms of the scalability or the actualization of what you guys were set to do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I wish Mookie were here to take all the credit because he did. Yeah, I mean, he deserves a lot more credit than me in terms of making it feel like a fully polished product. Like, you don't understand how much work goes into making an animated thing, anything in general, but an animated thing, this took so much work. There's like 300 sound effects in
Right.
the
Damn,
cartoon that
that's all
you
possible.
don't realize they're there, but if they were missing, you'd be like, what, this shit is whack. You know,
Right.
but he spent, you know, nights, days, nights, you know, lost sleep putting those sound effects in and then mastering the sound to make it sound like, okay, if someone's talking on the left side of the screen, it's coming from the left side of the screen versus the right side of the screen, versus like if Kevin is flying away, it sounds like he's flying away. All that shit takes so much attention to detail and work
Right.
that luckily I didn't have to do. Mookie did all of it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a lot of
Right.
work.
Right. Well, I'm sure about that. But also speaking about the fact that you said that you one of the co-creators of the show, you've written the show. If we could touch on another topic, researching you, I found out that you're the first Indian origin writer for Saturday Night Live, which is a show I really look up to.
Uh,
So has that sort of making sketches on the go, writing stuff, writing gags, and being imaginative about the limited, like I'm sure you might be getting a week with the actors to jam and pitch all these sketches and all of that. Has that really helped you in Zoo Idiots in any way?
so
Can I can I can I
I
add
yeah, go
something
ahead.
to that question actually? I mean,
Right.
I was meaning to ask you about this. That you've been a stand-up comedian for a long time now, and even Mookie does stand-up comedy in his own right, right?
Uh-huh.
So, how does that come? I mean, how does comedy doing stand-up helps out in writing, uh, for example, Two Idiots?
Yeah. I mean, I think you know you both yours Parth is a slightly broader version of Bharat's question,
Right.
but you know the answer is the same. But let me first say that I was a writer at SNL. I'm not a writer there anymore. I was there from season 40. I was there at season 43
Right.
from September 2017 to May of 2018. I'm currently
Okay.
writing on A Little Late with Lily Singh, which is Lily
Oh,
Singh's
okay.
late night
Right,
show,
right.
and that started about 2 weeks ago. Uh,
Okay. So
so
that's
your
the second
question
season.
is, yeah,
That's the second season.
the second season. So your question is like, how does working on one thing inform the other thing? And that's the gist of your question, from what I understand. And the answer is a lot. How if the question is how much, the answer is a lot. You know, like when you're Zoo Idiots was such a new world of understanding like what goes into developing a character. You know, I've developed pilots before, but every time you develop a series, you learn something new about the process, and you learn something new about what goes into making a really strong character in general. And so that will inform my stand-up and the other stuff I do, because really when you're developing something like a cartoon, you're asking what's the motivation behind these characters' actions, and what's the motivation behind the show in general.
Right.
And through, you know, if you can insert subtext in everything you do, whether it be a joke or a sketch or song, then
Right.
you've elevated what you're doing. So
You
that
layered
is
it.
how,
Basically,
like it's made it have a lot more value than just superficial
absolutely.
joke or what have you, and vice versa. Like being a stand-up informs, whether it's writing a sketch or writing a cartoon, it informs your ability to get to the point. You know, when you're a stand-up, you want the joke to be the first thing. And so when you're writing comedy in general, you're like, okay, what's the joke of this thing? What's the joke of this sketch? What's the
What's the
joke of this
insight?
scene?
I guess the insight is what, right.
Yeah, what's the joke? And that's what stand-up kind of makes you ask the most. Like, what is the fucking joke? And if you can keep that in mind when you're writing anything, you're leagues ahead of people who are just starting out, or who are, you know, still figuring out what they're trying to say. Like at the end of the day, comedy is about what's the joke. And so being a stand-up, helps you find that joke faster, because it's just a skill set you develop over time, if you're cognizant of it. And
Absolutely.
and secondly, it informs what we think people will receive well,
Correct.
because being on stage, you know, hundreds of times in a year, thousands of times in a year, you come to learn what people like and what they will respond to. Or hopefully your gauge is correct. And when something's funny.
You can see the merit in it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like that, trickles into everything you do.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, it does. It does. Yeah. So my other question to you is that I know that, lockdown, you being from Brooklyn, actually, my sister also happens to stay there. And I know that how lockdown has been to New York and the neighboring places. And also the fact that, the comedy clubs have shut down. I don't know whether you are super into doing Zoom gigs or not, because that's a thing in India which has been happening of lately as a parallel scene. But I'm sure that you starting, focusing a little bit towards the animating side of things has something to do with the comedy club starting and you channelizing your comedic voice through animation, or what has it been like? Or was that always the plan?
It wasn't a plan. It just so happened that, Zoo Idiots came my way and we're like, I would love to do something with this. If stand-up were still popping off and we're still like a thing I could be doing every night. And I think it is something I could be doing every night if I were doing like Zoom shows and open mics and stuff. But I've just kind of been like, you know what, let me take the year or take the 7 months, 9 months, whatever it is, to enhance the other skills that being on stage necessarily won't enhance, or that will enhance the skills that when I get back on stage, I'll just be that much stronger.
Right.
And so that was hold on one second.
Yep. Sure.
And so, that was the conscious decision when it came to not taking a step back from stand-up. Is just more just like, I'm going to pause for a second because there's so much other stuff I could be doing to enhance the skills that stand-up requires. And because there's a very limited stage time, the kind of stage time I'm used to and that I want, that's not necessarily a bad thing,
So speaking, while researching you, both Parth and I, we came across a lot of things that you've done, and we were actually really astonished by the things you've done. On a sincere note, like the fact that you've written for Chris Rock's monologue, which is genuinely one of my favorite monologues that he did when Will Smith and everybody boycotted the Oscars and he came and hosted. If I'm not wrong, that's the Oscar you wrote for, right?
Yeah. That was my first writing job.
Right. And I genuinely love that monologue. So also speaking about the fact, my question is sort of like a middle ground to the previous questions I've asked you. Like we said that writing animated content and writing stand-up. I think even in Joe Rogan's podcast, Anthony Jeselnik was asked about the fact that he wrote for Jimmy Fallon and how difficult it is to write for other people's voices. So the fact is that how was it for you to write for Chris Rock? I'm sure you were part of a writer's group or a writer's room when you did that. What was the experience like? If you could just share a tidbit on that.
Yeah, I mean, writing for Chris was probably, in hindsight, one of the easier jobs, and also one of the more intimidating ones at the onset. Only because it's Chris, and I grew up watching him, and here I am trying to tell him jokes, and they're not working, and so. But when you work for someone like Chris, who has such a sharp understanding of what their voice is, the best people are the ones who will hear something you say and understand almost automatically what you're trying to say, and then on top of that, how they would say what you're trying to say. And so, Chris was like that. Chris is Chris. Right. He's Chris Rock for a reason.
Absolutely.
And so, he knows automatically like what you're trying to say, if it's not going to work for him, if it vibes with him, or if there's something in what you're trying to say that he could use or could inspire something with him. And I'll say about that monologue that, we were there, the team was there, and, but at the end of it, it's Chris. Only Chris could do that. And he did such a fantastic job. And that's all like Chris's voice, his heart, his jokes, his fucking spirit, And granted, some of us got some jokes on, so to speak, but at the end of the day, it's like that man drove everything, and to be there and have worked with him on other stuff after that has just been an honor and a privilege. But yeah, I mean, it was nothing but the best time ever.
I'm sure about that because I could see, and also Chris, I think even Neil Brennan has spoken about the fact that Chris Rock, because he's on that level, I mean, not to deviate from what we're talking, I mean, being on that level, he doesn't have people who are real to him. So he probably has a bunch of writers that he keeps bouncing off ideas with, if I'm not wrong, when he's testing material or workshopping material. So
yeah, I think, I mean, he's definitely not afraid of hearing people's opinions, but about stuff, but he's also like very much on top of like that's him, you know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, we're there sometimes, just be like, oh, okay, you know, that's funny, or here's a tag or some shit, but you know, at the end of the day, it's like, who the fuck else is thinking of the shit that he thinks of, you know?